theyeshiva.net.
Okay, Ches Amud Beis, the Mishnah. 8b-9b musgar, le'mitzayra muchlat. Says the Mishnah, 8b-9b musgar, le'mitzayra muchlat, ella fria prio frima. There's no difference between a confined leper and a confirmed leper, except with regard to letting his hair grow and tearing his garments. What does this mean? Let's remember the basics. The Torah says that if somebody is afflicted by certain skin afflictions, they have certain symptoms on their skin, they're deemed a mitzayra. But those symptoms are very, very meticulous. The basic one is they develop a white patch of skin, and within the white patch, there has to be secondary symptoms. For example, the hair inside turns white, or inside the patch, healthy skin develops inside the patch. Those are the two classic simonim of tzaras, that the hair became white, the hair was transformed, and or another simon is that there's a healthy piece of skin inside that patch. Those are the two classic examples. The kohen comes and says, this person is a mitzayra. This is called a mitzayra muchlat, a confirmed mitzayra. Now, there's a lot of halachas. The person has to be quarantined. They have to leave badad yeshiv mechutz lamachana. They had to go out of all the three machanas, Machana Shchina, Machana Leviyah, Machana Yisrael. Those are the cities in Eretz Yisrael that were surrounded by a fortress. They had to leave, even in the Midbar. They had to leave outside of Machana Yisrael until they're healed. When they're healed, there's a whole process of healing. What's the process? The process is they can come back and their hair is shaved. They go to the mikveh. There's a whole process where two birds are taken and one bird is slaughtered into an earthenware vessel with water, and the blood hits the water, and then the kohen sprinkles from the water on the mitzayra. Okay? That's the beginning of his purity. He waits 7 days. On the 7th day, again, the hair is shaved and he goes to the mikveh, and then the next day he brings karbonis, and that's the end of the tzaras. That's called a mitzayra muchlat, a confirmed mitzayra. A mitzayra musgar is a quarantined mitzayra, meaning the kohen sees the symptoms, but it doesn't yet have the symptoms of impurity. So the kohen quarantines him for a week and then checks it out after a week. Sometimes he'll quarantine him for 2 weeks. If there's no change, he'll let him go. If there is a change to the worse, he may make him a muchlat then. If there's a change to the better, of course he'll say you're good to go. So that's the difference between mitzayra muchlat and mitzayra musgar. Mitzayra muchlat is he's a confirmed mitzayra. In other words, the kohen deems him as tamei, and he has to wait until the symptoms heal. That's a mitzayra muchlat. But what happens if it's the beginning of tzaras, but there's no ultimate symptoms yet? The kohen will put him away, will quarantine him in the house for 7 days, and he's going to look at it again. That's called a mitzayra musgar. If at the end of the week he sees, let's say, that the white patch developed white hair, or there's raw or healthy skin inside the patch, or the whiteness expanded, different simonim that he'll see after a week. Now, he's going to say, you're a mitzayra muchlat, but he had to wait a week. If there's no siman tumah, nothing happened, he'll quarantine him for a 2nd week, and then he's going to look the 2nd week again. If there's no siman tumah, he'll say, you're good. You could be cleansed. Says the Mishnah, there's no difference between the two. Besides, unshorn hair, letting your hair grow, and rending your garments, tearing your garments. This is only by a mitzayra muchlat, not by a mitzayra musgar. All the tumas, a mitzayra tamei, exist by both. However, prio frima, the halacha that he has to let his hair grow and tear his garments, is only by mitzayra muchlat. There's no difference between becoming tahar from being quarantined and becoming tahar from being confirmed. Only shaving your hair and bringing the birds. Meaning, by a confirmed mitzayra, there was a whole process of tahara. Besides going to the mikveh, he had to shave all of his hair. They had to bring 2 birds, as I said, in order to cleanse him. But by a Mitzvah Muchlat, that doesn't have to happen. He does not have to go through this whole process. Basically, he goes to the mikveh and he's tahor. After the Kohen says you're good to go. So the Gemarah says, okay, what are they identical in? Two things. Being sent out outside of the camp. By the Mitzvah, the halacha is he can't remain within the community. He has to go outside of the city. In Eretz Yisrael, this halacha was only if it was a city that had a fortress. Yeshua ben Nun. There's three machanas by Jews. Machana Shechina, Machana Leviah, Machana Yisrael. Yeah. Machana Shechina was the Beis HaMikdash and the Azara. Machana Leviah was the Harabayas. Machana Yisrael was the whole Yerushalayim, the old city inside the wall. The Mitzvah had to go out of all three. In the Mishkan, you had the Mishkan itself, you had around the Mishkan Moshe Rabbeinu's residence, and then you had Machane Yisrael, the Mitzvah had to go out. So both of them would have the same halacha, and they would also both be tameh, the same tumah, zevez eshav, and there's no difference. The reason it comes into the Megillah is because these Mishnahs are going through things that are identical almost, but not completely, because we started off with Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni, that they're identical besides Megillah and Matanas Lavyonim. So he goes through other halachas. Right, incidental. Frag the Gemarah Minan and Mili. How do you know that a Mitzvah Musger doesn't have the halacha of what? Of Priya and Prima, letting his hair grow and tearing his garments. The Tani Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchak made Reb Huna. Reb Shmuel, the son of Yitzchak, taught a brais in front of Reb Huna. The Torah speaks about a kohen who sees a person who has symptoms. He quarantines him. He comes back, and nothing changed after 2 weeks. The kohen makes him pure. It's a mispachas. Mispachas means it's a pure nega, it's a pure symptom. V'chibes b'gadov, he bathes his clothes, washes his clothes, v'taher, and he became pure. And the question is, it should have said v'yitar, he shall become pure. V'taher sounds like he was pure. It's not he was, he will. V'yitar in the future, after mikveh. What is the Torah trying to say? He was pure even before. V'taher. What was he pure? You said he's tameh. The answer is tahir me priyo frima de meikara. From here we learn that even before he was tahir, legabi, letting his hair grow and renting his garments, tearing his garments, which a Mitzvah does do, he never had that chiyuv. Why would the Gemarah choose these two things? Parshas, because these are the most lenient halachas. So when you have to take off, we can't take over the stringent halachas of tumah or sending him out mechutz lamachana. But these two things, tearing a garment and letting his hair grow, are the most lenient. So we take that away because the Torah says v'taher, he was already pure even before. In other words, there was a purity that existed by him that didn't exist in the regular Mitzvah. That's why priyo frima we differentiate between the two types of Mitzvah. Amalei Rava, no. Rava tells Reb Shmuel, Ela Meyata, really? Take the story of Gabe Zov. You have a Zov. We learned yesterday the person who has the emissions 3 times. The Ksiv, the Pasuk says in Parshas Mitzayra, V'chibes begadov v'tahir. When he becomes tahir, he counts 7 clean days. He goes to the mikvah on the 7th day. He has to go to a living mikvah, meaning a living spring. He can't just go to a regular mikvah of rainwater, like the mikvahs that we use. He needs actually a well spring, a live well, mayim Chaim, and he becomes pure on the 7th day, as long as it was a 7-day count. And the Torah says, v'tahir. According to you, Hasamai v'tahir me'ikarika, you're saying he was pure. Where was he pure? He was a Zav who saw 3 emissions. All the dinim of Tumah apply to him. Everything we spoke about Tumah Zav. Yeah. He is matame that which he touches and that which he carries and that which he moves. And he's matame that which he lays on and that which he sits on. And they become an avhatum. It's called mishkav or moishav. All apply to him. So what's the v'tahir by him? What if you're teaching v'tahir by Mitzayra Musgar that he was tahir? What about this fellow? It also says v'tahir. Where was he tahir? He wasn't tahir before. Ella. So you have to say that v'tahir by Zav doesn't mean he was tahir before. Tahir hashta militame klei cheres behesed. He's tamei now after the mikveh, from being metame, an earthenware vessel? Through shaking it, through moving it. Explains. The afal gav the hadar chazi, even if he's going to see an emission that day, loy metame lemafreya, the keli will not become tummy retroactively. Hachenami tar hashtam letame bebia lemafreya. Here too by the Mitzayir, it means he's tar now, that even if he sees the symptoms coming back, the food or the items that he came with him into a tent, atar lemafreya. What does the Gemarah mean? The Gemarah means as follows. By Zav, there's a unique halacha that doesn't exist by other tumas. A clay cheres, an earthenware vessel, you can't be metame if you touch it. Only if the tumah goes into the ear space, not the exterior vessel. It's unique by clay cheres. Other kalim, if tumah touches the outer surface or the inner surface, it's tameh. Clay cheres not. That's why if a clay cheres is in a tent where somebody dies, so everything in the oil gets tameh, but if the clay cheres is sealed on the top, the tumah couldn't go into the cavity, into the ear space of the clay cheres, it doesn't get tameh. Because the only way you can be metame clay cheres is me'aviroi, not from the surface. The one exception for that is a zav. A zav has a unique halacha called hesed, which means if he's, let's say, shakes a beam. He shakes a beam, and on top of the beam, there's a beam in the roof. On top of the beam, there's a clay cheres. So he moves the clay cheres, right? Or with a broomstick, there's a clay cheres, and he moves it. There's a clay cheres tied at the end. So that clay cheres becomes tameh, even though he didn't touch it, because by moving it, he moved all of it, including the airspace. He moved all of it. He affected all of it. So therefore, it becomes tameh. What happens if it's 7 days? A person is a zav. He had 3 emissions, 1, 2, 3. He's completely tameh now. Okay, now he counts 7 clean days, beautiful. And the 7th day in the morning, he goes to the mikveh. But remember, he has to wait a whole 7 days. In the middle of the day, he has another emission. So now he has to restart the whole count, because you need 7 clean days. He has to start all over again from the 8th day. Starts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7th day he goes to the mikveh. So he could go to the mikveh in the morning, but it's only going to work if he doesn't see an emission during the day. What if he went to the mikveh in the morning, right? And he touched food, and he touched people, and he lay down on a bed, and then in the afternoon he sees an emission, so retroactively everything is tameh. Why? Because he didn't have 7 clean days. He was still as he went to the mikveh. The mikveh can help on the 7th day if it's going to prove to be a clean day, not if it proves to be an unclean day. The zav goes to the mikveh on the 7th day. Now, usually it's better to wait till the evening because there's less chances there'll be another emission. But you can go to the morning. You want to take a chance, you can take a chance. But now if he touches Terumah in the middle of the day, right, he's a kohen, he touches Terumah, and he sees an emission, retroactively the Terumah became tameh. Says Rava, the word v'taher teaches you one thing, that in such a case, the clay cheres that he moved will not become retroactively tameh just because he saw an emission. Because after the word v'taher, the pasuk says right afterwards that the clay cheres that he moves becomes tameh. So the v'taher applies to that halacha, that in that halacha there's a din that it was pure when he went to the mikveh, and therefore retroactively it doesn't become not pure. That's what Torah teaches you. Well, he could. He could. Well, no. He can't go on the first day. The mikveh, Torah says you have to go on the 7th day. It's better to wait, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. Yeah. So people that he touched during that day, they're going to become tameh retroactively. The clay cheres beheset, clay cheres that he moved won't become tameh retroactively. Yeah. So you could go to the mikveh any time of the 7th day as long as the day finishes up purely. If after the mikveh you saw an emission, so now you have to start over again. But one thing, the clay cheres remains tahar. That's the chiddush. Why? Because it says v'taher, not v'yitar. In other words, the Tara goes backwards. But he said, what does it mean goes backwards? He was never tahar. It means after mikveh, he becomes tahar. And even if later he becomes tameh, right? And he has to count again. But the clay cheres was already tahar. Yeah. So, legabe the clay cheres. Yeah. So he teaches the same by Mitzayra. But then by Mitzayra is that when he walks into a house, he walks into a tent, yeah? So the people or the food or the kelim that come in with him, it's called biyah, become tameh. So he said the same halacha happens here. The reason it says v'tayr is that usually the kalim that come in with him to an oil are tamei. But if this mitzayra musgar goes to the mikveh, because the kohen said you're good to go, so therefore he's tired. So now, even if we see that the mikveh was not good because afterwards the symptoms of tumah develop after the mikveh, so therefore, even though the kohen has to now tell him, you're a confirmed mitzayra, and the mikveh wasn't good, nonetheless the Torah teaches me that legabe tumas bia ba'oil, coming into the tent and being metame everything that's inside, the mikveh was good. That's why it says v'tahir. So the word v'tahir cannot teach me that this mitzayra doesn't have to rent his garments or let his hair grow because it says he was tahir. As Rabbi refuted it by a zav, it doesn't mean that. It just means that after mikveh, there are certain things that are not affected, even if later you will discover that you're tamei and you are a mitzayra. But legabe certain things, you still can say that the Torah was effective. By the zav, it's klei cheres beheset, and by the mitzayra, it's what's called milatame bebiyah, to be metame the kalim retroactively that came in with him to the tent, because one of the dinim of the mitzayra is that any person or any vessel or any food which comes in with him when he's a mitzayra to a tent or a house become tamei. So therefore the Torah says v'haba el habayis yitma. So therefore this will become tar after mikveh. So we're back to square one. How do you know that a mitzayra musgar does not have to tear his garments or let his hair grow? Amar Rav el amar Rav mehacha. The pasuk says v'hatzarua asher boy hanega b'gadav yufrumim. The leper, which in him is the leprosy, his clothes should be torn. What's asher boy hanega? V'hatzarua, the tzarua. The nega is in him. Misha tzarato itluya begufay. The leprosy depends on his body. It's in him. It depends on his body. Meaning, the only way he could cease to be a mitzayra is if his body heals. The exception is mitzayra musgar. His tzaras is not dependent on his body. It's only dependent on days. Meaning, nothing has to change in his body. If the days pass and the symptoms don't change, he becomes pure. By a regular mitzayra muchlat, the symptoms have to be transformed. They have to change. In other words, it depends on his guf, has to go through a process. What changes from mitzayra musgar? Nothing. If he actually remains the way he is and the kohen sees him, he's going to become tired. So Rav teaches this pasuk that speaks about tearing your garments. It says, "V'hatzarua asher boy hanega." The nega is in him. This teaches me it's a type of mitzayra that the nega is totally in him, not in the time. It's totally in the guf. The guf has to change. The mitzayra musgar, the guf does not have to change. It's also, by the way, the opposite. By a mitzayra muchlat, it's very different than a mitzayra musgar. Because mitzayra muchlat, whenever you get healthy, you're good. It could take a day, it could take 2 days, say 3 days. As long as the symptoms are gone, you're good. By a mitzayra musgar, you have to wait 7 days. So it's all about time. The kohen can't come back less than 7 days and 14 days. So that's why Rava says from here we learn the difference. That mitzayra musgar, a confined mitzayra, you don't rent your clothes, you don't let your hair grow. But a mitzayra muchlat, you have to, because it says vatzaru asher boy hanega. You have to still wait the 7 days. The kohen will come back and look at you and say, okay, you're good to go. Yeah, the quarantine is for periods of time. So it's all about yomim, it's not about the guf. On both ways. There's a mile and there's a chesar. Amalei abaya elameyata, really? The pasuk says, Kol yemei asher hanega boy yitma mechutz lamachna meishavai. As long as the leprosy is in him, he has to remain outside of the camp. Here it also says, Asher hanega boy. Misha tzarati tluya begufay hu de ton shaluach. V'shein tzarati tluya begufay ein ton shaluach. This should mean that the only one who has to be sent out of the community is only somebody that the tzaras is talui in his body, meaning a musgar. Vaktani, but we learned ein bei mitzayra musgar mitzayra muchlat ela priyo frima halainyan shiluach halatamoya bebiyaz evaz shavan. We learned that when it comes to expel it, to setting them out from the community, both mitzayras were identical. The only difference was priya and frima, letting your hair grow and tearing your garments. But according to you, just like it says by priyo frima asher boy anega, here it also says kol yemei asher anega boy. The nega is in him. In other words, it depends all on his guf, not on the days. Amalei, Rava said, Yemei kol yemei. Pasuk should have said over there, not kol yemei asher nega bai, yemei asher nega bai. The days when the nega is in, what is it? All the days? Kol rabbis mitzayim musgar l'shiluach. Obviously, he's trying to say all the days. The days. What's all the days? The days means the days. All is trying to include something. It's including even all the days, even the mitzayim musgar also has this halacha of shiluach. So you're right. Mitzad the asher boy hanega, we would have made the distinction, but the kol adds him. Says the Gemarah, Yachi tiglachas v'tzipora my time aloi. Why don't you have shaving and birds for the mitzayim musgar like you do for the mitzayim muchlat? The ktani ein bein Torah mitaychezgel, Torah mitaychechlet ela tiglachas v'tzipora. The only difference between the two of them becoming pure is the shaving and the birds. Everything else is the same. And everything else here, by the way, means mikveh. That's the ein bein. You see the power of mikveh. Amar Abaye, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "V'yotza kohen al mechutz lamachane v'hine nirpa nega hatzaras." The kohen goes out of the camp and he sees that the leprosy has been healed, and that's when he does this whole procedure of the shaving and the birds and everything. Misha tzarato tluya b'refuyas yotza zeh shein tzarato tluya b'refuyas ela b'yamim. It says v'hine nirpa nega hatzaras. It means, how did he become pure? How did he become healthy? He becomes pure because the nega was healed. The mitzayim musgar, it's not depending on the healing, it depends on days. As we said, nothing has to change in the nega. Even if it stays as is, as long as the days pass, he becomes tahir. Here it says, v'hine nirpa nega hatzaras. So it's only talking about the mitzayim where there has to be a ripui in the nega hatzaras. By a mitzayim musgar, if it just remains intact like it was day 1, day 14, you're good to go. So therefore we learned that this whole procedure would not apply to the mitzayim musgar, only to the mitzayim muchlat. But in terms of other halachas, of tumah, and going out of the community during those days that he can't be in the machana, we learn that they are identical.
Is by Nida the same way? So when she counts 7 days, go with the money?
No, a nida has to go the 7 days, at the night after the 7th day. But remember, a nida is very different than a zava, because a nida, she could even see blood all 7 days. A nida doesn't have the stringency of ziva. Ziva, I have to have a 7-day count, clean days. A nida, theoretically, the blood could flow for 7 days, right? And then 7 at night, she goes to the mikveh. No, that's ziva. Me'ikir hadin, let's say the blood flows usually for 5 days. 5 days, she waits till 7 days, means she waits another 2 days. She goes to the mikveh at night, she's good. Today, because we don't know how to distinguish between the blood of ziva and the blood of nida, so therefore, even for nida, we do a 7-day clean count, because we apply the halachas of ziva to nida. But that changed in the times of the Gaonim. Huh? Right, so by nida, the halacha is after 7 days. You have to wait till the night after 7 days.
So then she has to be
Full 7 days. Whereas ziva, the Torah says you go to the mikveh on the 7th day, which is a clean day. And there's a difference, because nida, the 7th day, she could still bleed. So at night she goes to the mikveh. Shivas yamim tia binidasa.
Even if she doesn't bleed, if she has takanoki in the morning.
Right. It's not the zman of mikveh. The zman of mikveh is at the end of 7 days. Full 7 days. Says the Mishnah, ein bein stvarim l'tfilin u'mezuzahs. There's no difference between the laws pertaining to Sifrei Torah, l'tfilin u'mezuzahs. When I say Sifrei Torah, I don't only mean Sifrei Torah of Chumash, but what we call all the Svarim of Tanakh, all the books of the Tanakh, which means Mishachum Shatayra, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. There's no difference between those books, and Tfilin and Mezuzahs. There's no difference between their halachas, as he's going to explain what we mean. There's no difference. Ella sha'asfarim nichtavim b'chaloshin utfilin and Mezuzahs ena nichtavis ella ashuras. The books of the Tanakh, all the Svarim, could be written in any language. Tfilin and Mezuzahs have to be written only in Ashuris, which means in Hebrew. Ashuris is basically the script, the ksav that we use till this very day. The square Hebrew script of Lashon HaKodesh is called Ashuris, that we use till this very day when we write our Sifrei Torah. When you look at your tefillin parchment, you look at your mezuzahs, that's called ksav ashuris. That's basically the ksav of Lashon Kodesh that we use today for Sifrei Torah, tefillin, and mezuzahs is called ashuris. Why is it called ashuris? What's the word ashuris? Ashuris, some people teach from the word mu'usheres. Mu'usher. It's the fortunate, the lucky script. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation is geography. Comes from Assyria, Ashur, right? Melech Ashur comes from Assyria. Or Ashur is like clear, beautiful, fortunate. So this is called Ksav Ashuris. That's how you have to write tefillin and mezuzahs. Other svarim of Tanakh, you can write in other languages, as the Gemarah is going to discuss. Any language, not only in Ashuris. Even Tanakh, the sage is only allowed to write it in Greek. Meaning, I don't agree with Tanakama that you can write it in any language. Tefillin and mezuzahs, I agree with you that it has to be Ashuris. But even other Svarim, they did not permit any foreign language besides Yavanis, besides Greek. The Gemarah is going to explain. Okay. So what do we have here? A halacha, a fascinating halacha, that when it comes to Svarim of Kisvei HaKodesh, Tanakama says you can write it in any language. Now what do we mean you can write it in any language? It means that even when it's in another language, it still has the Kedusha of Kisvei HaKodesh. It's called a Sefer of Torah, or a Sefer of Nevi'im, or a Sefer of Ksuvim. Yeah, it has to have ink, it has to have parchment, there's certain conditions. But this is Negei Lahalacha, because we know, for example, Kisvei HaKodesh Matamim Es Hayadayim. They contaminate your hands. Is this called Kisvei HaKodesh? He says in any language, it's called Kisvei HaKodesh. We know another halacha, that you're not lechatchila supposed to say Baal Peh, things from Torah Shebeksav, Varim Shebeksav, Iya Torah Shai Laimra Baal Peh. Is this called Torah Shebeksav? Can you read it from here? Can you do Kriyas HaTorah from there? Can you do Kriyas HaTorah B'tzibur from this Ksav? These are practical questions if this is called a Sefer of Kisvei HaKodesh. So he says any language is good besides Tefillin and Mezuzahs. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel argues and says no, only Greek. Greek, yes, but not other languages. Unlike Tanakama, he's much more stringent.
So Tanakama says that you can have a scroll in English.
Yeah, but the Gemarah is now going to analyze this. Says the Gemarah, Halatoy from Begidden, but what about to sewing them with sinews? Basically, in the time of the Shas, of course, it's not like today. Everything was scrolls, Sifrei Torah, and you had to sew everything up. In other words, the separate uriyas, the separate pieces of parchment had to be attached. And how did you attach them? You attached them by sewing them with sinews. So he says over here, it's identical. The same is true l'tamiyas hayadayim, to contaminate the hands that touched it. We learned earlier that Sifrei HaKodesh l'tamiyas hayadayim, because of different reasons the Chazal gave, zev ezeh shavan, they would be the same. Svarim, tefillin, and mezuzahs all have to be sewed with sinews, and all of them are matameh the yadayim. Svarim nichtavim b'chalashain. However, all the Svarim of Tanakh, all the books of Scripture can be written in any language. Frag the Gemarah, really? V'raminu. I'm going to ask you a question. We learned a Braisa that if you have a Sefer from the Tanakh, Mikra Shekosvei Targum, if it was supposed to be written in Lashon Kodesh, but the scribe wrote it in Aramaic, the Targum Shekosvei Mikra, if it had to be written in Aramaic, and he wrote it in Lashon Kodesh, for example, when Yaakov runs away from Lavan in Parshas Vayetze and they meet, so what happens? Yaakov builds a mound of stones. Very good. So it says, Lavan called it Yigar Sahadusa. V'Yaakov karaloi Galeid. Yigar Sahadusa is written, it's an Aramaic word. Yaakov called it Galeid. What if the Sefer says, I'm not writing Yigar Sahadusa. I want pure Hebrew in my Chumash, in my Sefer. That's called Targum Shekosvei Mikra. It was supposed to be Targum Aramaic, and he wrote it in Mikra. Another example would be parts of Daniel. The book of Daniel are Aramaic, most of it, right? If you ever read Daniel. Part of Ezra is Aramaic. He decides he wants to write it in Lashon Kodesh. So he writes it in Lashon Kodesh. That's called Targum Shekosvei Mikra. It's supposed to be Targum. He writes it in Lashon Kodesh.
Say the same thing about
Tzafnas Paneach. Perhaps Tzafnas Paneach. Toitafos, Rashi says, is Kisvi in Africa. Moish Anoichi, the Medrash says, is Egyptian. Enoch. In Egyptian, you say I, Anochi Loshen Mitzri. So he says, I don't like Taitafis, yeah. These are different examples. Uksav Ivri, or what if the Sefer uses a Ksav Ivri instead of a Ksav Ashuri, meaning he wrote it in Ivri script. What's Ivri script? So as he explains here, the language remains unchanged, but he uses not the script called Ashuris, but the script identified as Ivri, or it's also identified as Libunana script. Lebanah script, Libunah script, Libunaa script. That's called Ksav Ivri. The Ramban identifies this script as an ancient script found on ancient Jewish coins and inscriptions. And the Ashuris, which we use for Sefer Torah, was usually reserved, he says, for sacred writings. And this script was used for common writings. And I believe that the Shomroinim, the Samaritans, still may hold on that script. And very often, if you go to the Israeli Museum or other museums, you'll see a lot of archaeological excavations, and you'll see Ksav Ivri, which means you won't be able to identify the words. And they have Tanakh, they have coins, they have scrolls, letters, different ideas that it's ancient script of Jews in Eretz Yisrael. It's called Ivri, which of course is Hebrew, but it's not the Hebrew that we know. The Hebrew we know is Ashuris. So if he decides to write it B'Ksav Ivri, he writes everything nicely. But Bereshis, instead of writing Bereshis, Beis Reish Aleph Shin Yud Saf, as we know, in the language of Ashuris, he writes Ksav Ivri, a different language, the same word, Bereshis. Einay Metamei Hayadayim. The Brisa says this does not contaminate the hands at all. In other words, it doesn't have a din of a sefer. That's like transliteration. Transliteration is what he does, Transliteration would be like you'll write Bereshis, right? B-E-R-I. You don't write in the beginning. The first part of the Brisa says you translate the word, meaning you use a different word. Instead of Bereshis, you write in the beginning in Aramaic. The second idea is, no, you write Bereshis, right? But it's like you'll be writing, instead of Beis Reish Aleph, you write B-E-R-I-E-S-H-I-S. You could read Bereshis, B-A-R-A, Bara. It's just you're using a different alphabet. That's called Ksav Ivri. Of course, it's not English, it's Ksav Ivri, which Ksav Ivri was considered a very important script. After Ashuris, it was used by the Jews. Not good. It's not a sefer. You need Ksav Ashuris, which means the script of Ashuris, on a sefer, on parchment with ink. What do we see from this brisa? That in order for it to be a sefer, it has to be written in the right language. Lashon HaKodesh. So we have here a contradiction. Our Mishnah says, Tanakama says, you can write it b'chol lashon. He says not. Amar Rava lo kasha. They're talking about different things. Kan begufan shalanu, kan begufan shalahen. Our Mishnah is talking about our script. They're talking about a different script. Our Mishnah says you use our script, but in a different language. Kan begufan shalanu. You use our ksav. In other words, you change the language, but not the script. So you'll write, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth, right? Like Yiddish. Yiddish, You change the language, but the script is the same. Ksav Ashuris. That's what our Mishnah is fine with that. But Chol Lashon means the language changed. You want people to understand it. But they still have to be able to read the symbols of Ksav Ashuris. That's Mamish, like when it comes to our Yiddish. It's a different language. In Onheib had der Eberste Baschafen, you remember from Cheder? In Onheib had der Eberste Baschafen, the Himmel and the Earth. When did you get your first frask? Pasuk Aleph or Pasuk Beis? So what is that? In Onheib, but the Eberste Baschafen, it's the same exact letters in Onheib. So if you write a Sefer Torah in Onheib, you used Aleph, Yud, Nun, whatever, right? So it's different letters because it's a different language, but it's the same script. That's what our Mishnah is talking about. The Brisa is talking about their script. In other words, you wrote it in Ksav Ivri, and you changed the language. You changed the language, like you'll write, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. You changed the language, plus you changed the script. I-N is not Beis Reish, Ashuris, right? Vayikra al Moshe, say Vayikra. Amalei Abaye says, I'm sorry. This does not make sense. Why? But Mayu Kim Talahi. How did you explain the Braisa? Begufan Shalahen. Gufan Shalahen means that they used another script. Right? That's what he said. Begufan Shalahen. Not Begufan Shalanu, not our Ksav, but their script. I got that. Okay. That's what you said happened. And that's the problem. The problem is not another language. I don't care if it's another language. The problem is another script. The Ksav is holy. You need this Ksav. Even if you're writing in the beginning, it has to be in the beginning with Ashuris. Transliteration, it's called. No, I'm sorry, not transliteration, because it's another language, but it's that script, not transliteration.
You just use the font.
The alphabet, the fonts of the fonts of the Ksav Ashuris. If that's the case, I have a question. Read the Braisa. What did the Braisa say? The Braisa said, if a sofer writes, my area mikra shekosve targum shekosve mikra, he says if the sofer writes something you have to write in Hebrew and Aramaic, something you have to write in Aramaic and Hebrew. But really, afilu mikra shekosve mikra v'targum shekosve targum nami, even if he kept everything in the right language. He wrote in Lashon Kodesh what you have to write in Lashon Kodesh. He wrote in Aramaic what you have to write in Aramaic. Still, it's possible. It's not a good Sefer Torah. The Braisa says you have to be written in the script of Ashuris on parchment with ink. You're telling me that the reason that the Braisa says that the Sefer Torah is not a good Sefer Torah is because it's a different font. That's the issue. Because it's a different font, so therefore it becomes a puzzle that's not a good Sefer Torah. And therefore it's not Metameh Sayadayim, it's not called a Ksav. That's what you told me. It's Begufan Shalahen. That's what you explained, versus our Mishnah. But look at that Braisa. That Braisa gives two conditions. That Braisa says he also changes the language. Where it had to be written in Hebrew, he wrote Aramaic. Where it had to be written in Aramaic, Yigar Sahdusa, he decided as Gale. Daniel is written in Aramaic, he wrote it in Lashon Kodesh. But 1 second, you just explained that the moment you change the Ksav, it's already possible. So even if you didn't change any language, you wrote everything as it has to say. Yigar Sahadusa is Yigar Sahadusa. The problem is what? That you changed the symbols, you changed the alphabet, you changed the font, you didn't write it with our font of Ksav Ashuris, you wrote it with Ksav Ivri. That's the problem. That's what you see clearly from the Braisa. So Rav said the whole difference was that by us in the Mishnah, it's our script, and over there it's their script. That's the issue. But you see that the Braisa gives another problem. What does he say? He says, Mikra shekosve targum shekosve mikra. You don't need that. Even if it's Mikra shekosve mikra and targum shekosve targum as is, if he wrote it a Ksav Ivri, it's a problem. That's Abaye's problem. So he's asking a very strong question on Rava, because the Braisa tells us at the end that if it's not Ksav Ashuris, if it's Ksav Ivri, it's not a sefer anymore. You have to have Ksav Ashuris and not Ksav Ivri. So you can't tell me that when the Braisa in the beginning says that changing the language takes it away from a sefer is talking in a way where you also change the Ksav. You can't say that. Rava says that as long as you don't change the Ksav, everybody holds it's a kosher Sefer Torah. I don't care what language you used. And the Braisa agrees with that. That's what Rava said. The Braisa says it's not a good sefer. Rava says, it's very different. Over there, the problem is you change the Ksav, right? That's what Rava said. Abaye said, you're not reading the Braisa right. Because the Braisa clearly says that what? That a shinui in the Lashon is mafkia from Torah Sefer. If Mikra becomes Targum, and Targum becomes Mikra, which means you're changing the language. Ella, therefore, loy kasher. Harabonon, harab Shimon ben Gamliel. Much better. This is the rabbis, this is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Our Mishnah believes that you could write it in every language. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, at the end of our Mishnah, said you can't write Svarim in every language. That's the Brisa. You can't write it in another language. That's it. You can't write it. Frag the Gemarah, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Ika Yavonis. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said you could write it in Greek, so it doesn't work with the Brisa. The Brisa says it has to be written Biksav Ashuri, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel clearly said you can write it in Greek. So you're stuck again. It's not Ashuri, it's Yavonis. Now, you may want to answer, maybe you could answer, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel meant that you could write it in Greek in the letters of Ashuris. Maybe that's what he meant. So it's not a contradiction. You can write it in the Greek, right? But you have to use the letters of Ksav Ashuris, which would be very, very difficult. So when the Brisa says write it in Ashuris, it doesn't mean the language, it means the Ksav. Yeah, but so the Ritva says nicely, says that the logic now of the Gemarah is that there's no difference between the language and the script. In other words, if the language is kosher, if another language is kosher, right? So then the script is also kosher, which is of course much more convenient, because when a person is reading Greek, they would like to read in Greek. So the Gemarah is now understanding that where a language is kosher, according to Chachamim, all languages, and according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Greek, it's together with the Ksav. That's how the Gemarah understands, not to distinguish. That's Abaya's point. So he says, "Elaloi kasha, kam b'sfarim, kam b'tfilin u'mezuzos." The Bryce is talking about tefillin and mezuzahs. It's not a stira. Our Mishnah is talking about svarim of Tanakh. The Bryce is talking about tefillin and mezuzahs. Tefillin and mezuzahs, they said clearly it has to be in Lashon Kodesh and Ashuris. What's the problem? You're right. You need the right language and you need the right script. And you need ink and you need parchment. And it has to be Ksav Ashuris and it has to be the language. Why? Tefillin and mezuzahs is my time. What's the reason that they would distinguish between a Sefer Torah and tefillin and mezuzahs? You would think the other way around. He says, Mishum deksiv, but by tefillin and mezuzahs it says, V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzav chayim alav avecha. What's v'hayu hadvarim ha'ela? These words that I'm telling you should be on your heart. You should teach it to your children. You should say it throughout the day. Ukshartam la'oisal yadecha. Do these words sound familiar? Okay, this is called tefillin and mezuzahs, right? That's why in the tefillin we have this parsha called Shema. In mezuzahs we have this parsha called Shema. And what are the words? V'hoyu hadvarim ha'ela. These words shall be on your heart, and tie it on your hand, tie it on your head, put it on your door. We learn from the word v'hoyu b'haviyason yehe. They should always remain in the same fashion. In other words, never change the original language and never change the original script. So Vahayu teaches me they have to remain as they are, never change them. Ba'aviyason Yehu, they have to remain in their reality. Vahayu hadvarim, they shall be. No one gives you a right to manipulate these words. So when it comes to tefillin and mezuzahs, exactly the way it's in the original. How is the Sefer Torah written? It's written in Lashon Kodesh, not in English, not in Greek, not in Aramaic, and it's written in Ashuris. You have to keep that. Okay, very good. We gave a beautiful reconciliation. He says, wait, but the Brisa said that there's Targum that you wrote as Hebrew. My Targum shekasvei mikriyike. Where do you have in Tefillin and Mezuzahs Aramaic words that he decided to write in Hebrew? The Brisa says that he took Targum and he wrote it as Mikra, but you don't have that in Tefillin and Mezuzahs. Bishleim Torah iki yigar sadus. In Torah, Vayetze, you have yigar sadus. It's Aramaic. If the Sefer writes Galeit, it's Targum shekosvei Mikra, not good. Elohacha my Targum Mikra. Go through Tefillin and Mezuzahs. Where do you have the ability that the Sefer should take Targum and say, I don't like the Aramaic, I'm doing it in Hebrew, and therefore disqualifies it? So you can't say the Bryce is talking about tefillin and mezuzahs because the context doesn't make sense. Elaloi kasha, you have to say, kan b'Megillah, kan b'Svarim. A new answer. The Bryce is talking about Megillah's Esther. Our Mishnah is talking about every other sefer of Tanakh. Megillah, my time, if what's up is by Megillah, why are we so strict? The answer is the ksivba chichsavam v'chila shayna. In their writing and in their language, so you don't change, not from the script and not from the language. Where do you have Aramaic in the Megillah that the Sefer could decide, I want to translate into Hebrew, and he's not allowed to, and if he does, it's not a good Megillah. It's not a Ksav, Kodesh. Amar of Papa, V'nishma Pizgam HaMelech. V'nishma Pizgam HaMelech. Let the Pizgam, the word of the Melech, be heard. The decree shall be heard. Pizgam is not a word in Lashon Kodesh. It should have been Davar in Lashon Kodesh. Pizgam is Aramaic. If he decides to write Davar, disqualifies it because he changed the language. All the women should give Yikar. It's the Aramaic translation of Kavod. Glory, it should have said Kavod. In Aramaic, it's Yikar. And that's what the Sefer decided to change. It disqualifies it. It's not the Kisvei HaKodesh. That's what the Bryce is talking about. Megillus Esther. And there is taka a unique halacha, even according to Tanakama, that it has to retain the original Lashon and the original Ksav Ashuris. Rabashi says, I'll give you a different explanation. Kitanya ahi b'shai svarim. When the Bryce wrote what it wrote, it's talking about even other svarim, not only the Megillah. For Rabbi Yehuda, it's following Rabbi Yehuda. What's up with Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda holds that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel believes that Sifrei, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim have to be written in their language and in their Ksav. He's going to explain. The Tanya, we have a Bryce, Tefillin and Mezuzahs, and a Nechtav and Ela Ashuris. Tefillin and Mezuzahs have to be written in Ashuris. For Rabbi Seinu Hitiru Yevanis. This Bryce says that the rabbis allowed it in Greek. We just explained it says Vahayu. By Tefillin and Mezuzahs, you shouldn't change it. Ela mistake. It meant Sfarim Nechtavim B'Chaloshin. For Rabbi Seinu Hitiru Yevanis. The Sfarim of Tanakh could be written in every language, but the rabbis allowed only Yevanis. Frag the Gemarah Hitiru. Meklal the Tanakama Asa. That means Tanakama did not allow Yevanis, but he said it could be written B'chal Lashon. If he said it could be written B'chal Lashon, so how do you say Rabbi Seinu Hitiru Yevanis? But what? Tanakama did not? He says Nechtavim B'chal Lashon. So what's Pshat? Tanakama, it sounds like he answered Yevanis, and Rabbi Seinu Hitiru Yevanis. If it would have meant Rabbi Seinu Hitiru Rak Yevanis, fine. But it says Rabbi Seinu Hitiru. But he already said b'chalash. Ela ema. Rabbi Seinu lo yitiru sheichasu ela Yevanis. Rabbi Seinu were matter only Yevanis. Tanakama, our Mishnah, held you're allowed to write in every lashon. Rabbi Seinu were matter Yevanis, including the Yevanis. So Tanakama is the Tanakama of our Mishnah, and Rabbi Seinu is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel in our Mishnah, who's matter only Yevanis. V'tanya Amar Rabbi Yehuda av k'shei yitiru Rabbi Seinu Yevanis lo yitiru ela b'sefer Torah mishamaisa the Talmei HaMelech. Rabbi Yehuda clarifies, even when they allowed Yevanis, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, it was only in a Sefer Torah, not Nevi'im and Ksuvim, because of a story that happened with Talmei HaMelech, which we're going to discuss. So therefore, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Nevi'im and Ksuvim have to retain the original script. So now we settled the issue. Rabbi Ashi said, our Mishnah is talking about everything as the Mishnah is talking about. The Bryce is talking about not only Megillah Esther, the Bryce, which is a Daichik. The Bryce is talking about all Nevi'im and Ksuvim according to the Shimon ben Gamliel, because even when he says Yevanis, he only meant Sefer Torah Greek. Tanakama holds all languages Sefer Torah. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, even Yevanis, only Yevanis, I agree. Only Yevanis. Nevi'im and Ksuvim, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, no Yevanis. You retain the language, and that's the Bryce. The Bryce is talking to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, so everything makes sense. The Bryce holds Nevi'im and Ksuvim, only Ashuris and only Hebrew language. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel said Yevanis. Rabbi Yehuda clarified only Sefer Torah because of a story that happened with Talmei HaMelech. What's the story of Talmei HaMelech? That's the Gemara is going to discuss. Why Yevanis? Why Yevanis? So we'll see. Let's see. The Tanya we have, this is the story. Maisa beTalmei HaMelech. There was a story with Talmei HaMelech, Talmei the king. And now the Gemara is going to discuss the whole story. As Rashi says, who was Talmei HaMelech? Rashi tells us two words. Melech Mitzrayim Haya. He was a king of Egypt. And here is the story that happens with Talmei HaMelech. Now, Talmei, it is Ptolemy. It is Ptolemy. I believe that's how it's spelled. That's how they spell it. Ptolemy, P-T-O-L-E-M-Y. Now the truth is that this name, Ptolemy, was a generic name for Egyptian kings during that era. This Ptolemy that the Gemarah is now going to discuss is known as Ptolemy II. And his individual name was Philadelphus. He ruled around 300 years before the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. And the story that happens now, according to our tradition, happened in the year Gimel Tov Kuf Tesvav, which means 3,515. 3515 since creation. To give you perspective, the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed in the year 3338. Now it's 5780. 3338, 3,338. It's very easy to remember because it's Gimel Shilach. Shilach, the year they were sent away. Gimel 3338. This story happens 3,515 during the era of the second Beis HaMikdash. What happens? Kines shivim mashnayim skenim v'chnisim b'shivim mashnayim batim v'lo gila lahem al makinson. He gathers 72 sages. He puts them in 72 houses. He does not tell them the purpose. He goes into each one and he asks them to write down for me the Torah of Moshe, your teacher, in Greek. Now, they're in separate homes. They can't consult each other. They couldn't prepare beforehand because he didn't tell them the purpose. This was the strategy. He wanted to make sure it's an honest translation. If it's one person doing it, so then I could manipulate the text based on what I want you should know. But since it's 72 people, how am I going to know what you're thinking? How are you going to know what I'm thinking? You're not going to know. So therefore, they're going to know that they have to be honest because there's 72 people. And if you start manipulating the translation, why 72 dafka? That's an interesting question. Nasan HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'leiv kol echad ve'echad eitza ve'eskimu kulon l'da'as. God gave eitza, He gave wisdom into each one of them, and they all agreed on their own to make the same changes. And from this became the first translated text of Torah's Moshe Rabchem in Greek. In fact, it's known in history, there's something called Targum Hashivim. There's something called the Septuagint. The Septuagint basically means the translation of the 70 in Greek. In Septuagint is a word in ancient Greek. The Targum Hashivim, translation of the 70. This was the Torah in Greek. Talmi wanted that Greek culture should be enriched by Jewish religion. So he wanted to have it in Greek. And therefore, it became a very powerful resource that they now had fully translated for those who didn't understand Hebrew or couldn't read the script, and therefore they could now read it in Greek. Talmud is the second. Okay, so you have a picture, a bust. And the Gemarah now goes through all the changes, fascinating changes that they did. The first change was the first pasuk. Elohim bara bereshis. Elohim bara bereshis. They changed the order. Why? They were afraid. Bereshis bara Elohim will mean Bereshis created God. Bereshis created God. Bereshis bara Elohim. So in other words, there's a God who created another God, which would fit very well with Greek mythology. So therefore they said Elohim bara Bereshis. Now, you have to understand what this means, because it was written in Greek, so it didn't say Elohim, didn't say bara, didn't say Bereshis. But the concept is, when they translated it, it turned out to have this concept. Elohim created the beginning. Elohim created the beginning. Yeah. Now, I want you to take a look in Tosfos for a moment, because it's fascinating. Tosfos asked, third to the last Tosfos, Elohim bara Bereshis, Pirush HaKuntris, Im Kasvu Bereshis bara, Hayuemrim Bereshis Shemu Shtei Rishuyasei. For would have said, Bereshis bara Elohim, it means Bereshis is God, a God, and there's two gods, and the first created the second. Right? It's the old philosophy question. Can God create another God? Yeah. Bereshis created another God. They They couldn't explain that Bereshis means in the beginning. It's not a name. Bereshis means in the beginning. In the beginning, God created. V'oid, shekas v'loi b'loshen Yavanis b'tchila. It didn't even say Bereshis. It said in the beginning in Greek. Whatever in the beginning is in Greek. So why would they think it's a name of God? It's in the beginning in Greek. They're not reading it in Hebrew. Mela, they'll make a mistake. Bereshis is a name. V'nira loymar, so Tosfos says something fascinating. Hayavanim oyu yoidim shelo olam yesh lahaskir habayre b'tchila. The Yavanim believed, they understood, the first word you have to do the Creator. The first word you mention the Creator. V'im kein ilu kasu bereshis koidim, haya omer the shtei reshuyos sein, v'ateva reshena hava bayre echad v'lekim hava hashenim b'shemalchi avchul. They imagined that for sure the opening word of Torah is Hashem, God. The bayre, you start with the bayre. Whatever you write to me, if this is the first word, it's God. No difference. It's the first word of your Torah. You're translating. It's God. So your God created another God. Bereshis bara lekim. Zeus created this one, and Zeus created that one, and this. Yeah. Change number one. Yeah. And by the way, Derech Agav, our Torah starts with a beis. Their Torah starts with an aleph. Elikim bara Bereshis. Just for the record. Next, Esa Adam b'tzelem u'b'dmus. It says Nasa Adam. We shall make man in our image. They changed, I shall make man. We understand why. We shall make, again, can create a wrong impression. Rashi says they shouldn't think shtei rishos. Next, Vayichal b'yoyim hashishi vayishbez b'yoyim hashvi. What does it really say? Vayichul hashemayim v'aretz vayichal elikim b'yoyim hashvi. He finished his work on the seventh day. They changed it. He finished his work on the sixth day and he rested on the seventh day. Next. Zachor nekeva baroi v'loi kasvu baram. It says, Zachor nekeva baram. He created them, male and female. They made Zachor nekeva baroi. Rashi says, what's the issue? Baram sounds like he created two bodies, shnei gufim. Each one was like a Siamese twins, had a face of a male and face of a female. It was like two separate entities. Baram, like two Siamese twins. So he says, Bar'ai created him, one. Next, Hava Eidav Evlasham Svasam, by the Dor HaFlaga. I'm going to go down and mix up their language. It doesn't say that. It says Hava Nerda. We shall go down. They took out the we, they made I. Vatitzchak Sara Bikroi Veha. Doesn't say that. It says Sara laughed Bikir Ba. But they would say, ooh, God doesn't like women. Because Avram laughed, he didn't protest. Sarah laughed. He said, Lama zatzachaka Sarah. This is how you treat women. And of course, if you could blame the Jews with anything, you're going to blame them. So it says, Vatitzchak Sarah bikroi veha, meaning she laughed in front of her relatives, in front of other people. Avram laughed privately. That's how they changed it. Bikroi veha. Ki va'apam hargu shoyre b'ritzaynam ikru evus. Yaakov speaks to Shimon and Levi on his deathbed. He says, in their wrath, they killed an ox. And in their strong will, they uprooted, it said, a man. Which, of course, refers to the destruction of Shechem, assuming that Yaakov believed they were murderers. So they said, B'ritzaynam ikru evus. They uprooted an animal, an ox. As Rashi says, they shouldn't believe that we believe that our forefathers were ruthless murderers. So that's why they wrote Evus. Vayikach Moshe ishte v'ezbana vayarkivim al noise b'nei adam. Moshe took his wife and children and placed them on the donkey. They put it noise b'nei adam, that which carries people. For example, a camel. What would be the big deal? This is how you treat your leader. You don't give him a horse. You don't give him a camel. You give him a donkey, and he's supposed to put 3 people on the donkey. This is how you treat your leaders. This is embarrassing. And you're also torturing the donkey. Animal rights. Your wife and 2 children on a donkey. Not nice. So therefore, they changed Noise b'nei Adam. Moshe b'nei Yisrael she'ashu b'mitzrayim b'shar haratzis shloshim shana v'arba me'ez shana. It carries people. It could be a horse. It could be a camel. It's a donkey too. Vayarkivim al, on something that noise, it carries b'nei Adam. Right. They didn't want to lie. They didn't lie.
I'd say also they maybe predicted the future to be a car instead of.
Perhaps. Yeah. And he finishes the last two. Moshe b'nei Yisrael she'ashu b'mitzrayim b'shar haratzis shloshim shana v'arba me'ez shana. The time that Jews were in Egypt were 430 years. Talmud is going to say this is a lie. Take a look. Kahas came down to Mitzrayim. Kahas was a son of Levi. You had Amram. You had Moshe. Moshe was 80 when they left Egypt. Kahas lived 133. Amram lived 137. Moshe was 80. Kahas came down to Egypt. 133 plus 137 plus 80 is 350. And certainly Kahas and Amram and Moshe, a Zayda, a father and a grandson, live within each other's life. It's not like the day Kahas dies, Amram is born. The day Amram dies, Moshe is born. So that means they were in Egypt for much less than 353 years. 350 years. Even if you would have their full lifespan, it would be only 350. But they have to exactly for many decades. Plus, Kahas didn't come the day he was born. He came whenever he was older. So it's not 400 years, so it's a lie. So therefore they put in the words Bishara Ratzos. In Egypt and other countries, 430 years. So it's not going to be perceived as a sheker. In other words, 430 years doesn't begin when they're in Egypt. It actually begins from the day that Hashem predicted Galus Mitzrayim by Avram, Bris Ben Absarim, when he was 75 years old, until Yitzias Mitzrayim. If you make the cheshbon from Bris Ben Absarim till Yitzchak was born was 30 years, because Avram was 100 when Yitzchak was born, so it's around 30 years. And then from Yitzchak till Yitzias Mitzrayim is 400 years. So you have 430 years. Says, Vayishlach ezatute bnei Yisrael. It says, Vayishlach es nari bnei Yisrael. Moshe sent the youngsters of the Jewish people to bring karbonos by Ma'abed Har Sinai, by Matan Torah. So he's going to interpret that Moshe sent like nar, like the babies. So they wrote zatute, which is a form of prominence. Really, nari bnei Yisrael means the pchorim, but they went zatute, which means the prominent ones. The same is true. It says val zatute bnei Yisrael shalach yada instead of elatzile bnei Yisrael. The same change they had to make from Na'arim from Tzile to Zatute, so it should be in sync with the previous change. Loicha echad mehem nasasi. Moshe speaks about Kairach. He says, I never carried a donkey. They changed loichemed echad mehem nasasi. I did not take anything desirable from them. Because they were afraid, Talmud is going to say, oh, he didn't take donkeys. He took BMWs. He didn't take donkeys. He took your homes. So loy chemed, nothing. Next. Asher cholak Hashem elekecha oisam lahoyer lechol ha'amim. It says the Jews should not worship the luminaries or the planets or anything in heaven, which God was cholak. He distributed to all the nations. So they wrote lahoyer lechol ha'amim. So you shouldn't say that the nations are allowed to worship them. Because by us it says, Asher chalak Hashem elekecha oisam l'chol ha'amim, maybe that they could worship them. No, lahoyer, he gave them to illuminate the nations, not as gods. Vayelech vayaved elekim acherim asher lo tzivisi la'oivdam. He went and he worshipped other gods, or the sun or the moon, which I did not command. They put in the word la'oivdam. Because Talmud could say, I did not command. Asher lo tzivisi, I never wanted them here. Oh, but they came on their own. They have power. Asher lo tzivisi la'oivdam, I did not command you to worship them. Not asher lo tzivisi, I did not command. I did not command them. I didn't want them, and they're here in spite of me. They put in the word la'oivdam. V'chasvu loy. They wrote es tziras haraglayim. They translated the arneves, one of the unkosher species of animals called the arneves in Parshas Shmini. They wrote es tziras haraglayim. Why? Like kasvulei arneves meshe ishter shel talmi arneves shma. His wife was arneves, so they did not want that. So tziras haraglayim means, as Rashi says, the young-legged one. Her hands are short and even shorter than her feet. It's called Tzi'iras Haraglayim. So they wrote, that's what they did instead of Arnevis, because basically he could have taken it as an insult for his wife. They called it the short-legged creature instead of the Arnevis. We usually translate Arnevis as the rabbit, so they did the short-legged tree. the short leg, Tziras HaRaglayim.
When they wrote it, they didn't know that the
Well, they knew his wife's name.
No, when mom fucking read the Torah, they didn't know there's other 72.
No, they knew. But they were private, separate rooms.
But they knew that the other 70 also read the Torah.
That's what he says. HaKadosh Baruch Hu nasan eitza b'leiv kol echad.
But how did he know that Hashem will forgive it forever?
That's
He
what
didn't know.
the Hashem
When one wrote it, he didn't know that all the 72 will get it right.
It worked out.
If you know that Hashem gave you Eitzah, it means that Hashem gave Eitzah the same Eitzah to all the others.
I know there's a shtickle
Don't
no
worry. That's the miracle. That was the miracle.
Shelo yoyma, he shouldn't say, Sachaku bi haYehudim v'itilu shemishti b'Torah. The Jews are trying to mock me, and they put the name of my wife in Torah as one of the unkosher species. Basically, it would be a mockery of the king, which could have created catastrophe and disaster. So therefore, they did it.
It was not kosher because he married his sister. It's Philadelphus means Philadelphus, a lover of the sister. It was a sexual.
Philadelphia is love, Philo. So you say Philadelphus, he loved his sister. So Taka was an unkosher marriage. So he thought the Jews are, yeah. Because it is a pella that he would suspect that 72 people decided to put in his wife's name in the Torah to laugh from her. I mean, it's psagoinus that 72 people should decide together to laugh from his name. But the truth is that he was already a king for 30 years. So it could be that he thought that already a while ago they had this issue where they discussed his wife among themselves and they had this negative attitude. Huh? Yeah. And the Gemarah finishes, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer av b'sfarim lo yitiru ela Yavanis. So Reb Shimon ben Gamliel allowed the Sefer Torah in Yavanis. Why? Because already by Talmud HaMelech was translated. So by Sfarim, they were matter Yavanis, not other languages. Amar Reb Abo, Amar Reb Yochanan, Halacha, ki Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. The Halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel in our Mishnah. All Kisvei HaKodesh could be written in Greek. And in our Mishnah, it's not only the Sefer Torah, as Rabbi Yehuda said, but it's all Sifrei HaKodesh. So this is Mamash the Halacha that Rabbi Yochanan said. I should just say that the Rishonim write that even though the Halacha like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, in our days, if somebody writes Kisvei HaKodesh b'Yavanis, we do not accept it as a kosher Sefer Torah because ancient Greek is very rare today, and the Lashon of Yavanis in the time of the Tanoim, we don't have fully. It's full of mistakes. So therefore, Lamaisa, we paskin today that you need Lashon Kodesh. Why? Not because Reb Shimon Gamliel, the halacha is not like him, but because we don't have the pristine Yavanis, so therefore we have Ashuris and Lashon Kodesh. And the Gemarah finishes, Amar Reb Yochanan, my time I did Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. What's the reason? Other ksavim, other languages are not good. Why Yavanis? Fascinating. Omar Kra, the pasuk says, when Noach curses Chum and blesses Shem and Yefes after the story with his drunkenness, it says, Yaft Elikim liyefes v'yishkun ba'ahal Shem. God will beautify Yefes and he will dwell in the tents of Shem. In other words, may Hashem Yaft extend Yefes and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem. Taiches Rabbi Yochanan, Dvarov shall Yefes yiyu ba'alei Shem. The words and language of Yefes is Lashon Yavan, because Yavan, if you see in Chumash, is one of the Tzetzayim, he's one of the descendants of Yefes. It says in Parshas Noach, B'nei Yefes, Goimer, Magoig, Madai, Yavan, Suval Meshech Sira. So one of the children of Yefes is Yavan. So because Yavan is from the descendants of Yefes, so we see Yefes Yishkon Ba'alei Shem. In the tents of Shem, in the tents of the Jewish people who come from Shem, should be Yefes. Dvarav shall Yefes Ba'alei Shem. So that's the idea of Yishkon. Yishkon Ba'alei Shem, that Yefes should dwell by Shem. Goimer and Magog were also children of Yefes. So why don't you allow their language? It's also Yefes, Yishkon Ba'alei Shem. How do you know Yavan? It's a little different. Yaf Elokim liyefes. Yaf Yafusei shall Yefes yehi ba'alei Shem. Greek was considered the most sophisticated, beautiful, eloquent, meticulous, exquisite language of all the children of Yefes. Yafyafusa yafta lekim leyefes. May God give beauty to Yefes v'yishkin b'olei Shem. The beauty of Yefes should be in Olei Shem. In other words, the culture of Yavon, the language, not the culture, the language of Yavon, including the script of Yavon, that should be ba'olei Shem. So from here, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel learned that Yavonis is an exception, and our Sefer Torah and our Tanakh can be written in that language and in that script because of this special word that Noach said, that Yishkin ba'olei Shem. And as Rabbi Yochanan said, that is the halacha. Other languages, he says apostle. You can't have it in other languages. You can't translate it into even Aramaic or even Ksav Ivri, other scripts, other languages, apostle. Yavonis is kosher.
Isn't it there an indication that
Fascinating, huh? The beauty of Greece in the tense of the Semites. No, well, let's understand. This is not Greek, that's why I corrected myself. It's not Greek culture and philosophy. It's translating the Torah into the Greek language and Greek font.
Right. That's the other way around.
In other words, you're bringing Yefes into Shem.
Yefes into Shem also. If we bring him in without influence us, it's impossible. So there is a shtickle influence from Yefes.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not. I don't think it's.
The Gemarah says that the day that they translated the Shivim Skenim was Kasha Kayom Shanasa B'Ya'egel.
The name of the queen was Arneves, or Arneves translated.
I guess Arneves translated into Greek. Because if it was Arneves, they're not writing the word Arneves, they're translating it. I guess the translation was, or maybe her name was Arneves, but they were translating that name. Whatever, it would have been an insult. I don't know what her name was. Yafyafusa shal Yefes yehei ba'olei Shem.
And by the way, it's Hawks.
Wasn't the Sanhedrin 71 made of 71?
But this was 72. I am Bays here.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.